Salutations, spooks, spirits, and specters, and welcome back to Planetarian, the Reverie of a Little Planet, where Mr. Cusper has initiated an engagement against the Fiddler Crab, and his first shot messed up somehow? And now he has to improvise his next assault on the Fiddler Crab before he dies. My field of vision opened up. There was an abandoned commuter train sitting in the middle of a two-lane railway line. I concealed myself and took stock of the situation. The Fiddler Crab was moving rapidly, its forelegs tracking through the mud with ease. Just when I had thought it was going to retreat dozens of meters to the side of the quarantine wall, it suddenly altered its course. It stubbornly refused to abandon the rift in the wall, which it seemed to consider its post. It seemed that it had not recognized that I was a single infantryman and was instead taking random evasive action against an unknown quantity of enemies. A speed of approximately 25 kilometers per hour, quite slow considering that it was running off internal power. I could tell that its sensor, mounted on one side, was scanning for my presence. I'm assuming this is the scanner here on the right side. I already knew. The moment that my first shot had failed to explode, I knew that I had lost the gamble. Had I ears that could listen in on high-frequency radio communications, I would probably be hearing the Fiddler Crab requesting backup from any nearby units right now. Then, in 10 minutes at the soonest, the one human who still breathed in this town would cease to do so. In the midst of this unending rain, the order of this dead town would once again be frozen into place, and my fate would be sealed. I was suppressing the urge to allow a crazy smile to float to my lips. Right. What I had to do still had not changed. I had to silence that Fiddler Crab as soon as possible. I then had to retrieve her and slip past the quarantine wall. As I adjusted my grip on my gun, I recalled the words of the captain who commanded my training corps. Never stop moving. Always angle in toward the defensive perimeter and charge forward without fear. Easy to say and difficult to do. 2 AP rounds left. If at all possible, I would have to close in and first knock out a leg. Then I would have to aim for the armored top and destroy it without fail. I took a deep breath and then leapt into the rain. I ran. Having detected me, the Fiddler Crab slowed down and entered into a strafing sequence. The proximity sensors had painted me and the linked turrets were swiveling in my direction. I sprinted forward, kicking up splashes of mud. The muzzles of the Fiddler Crab's guns spit out light. I could see 3 points of red light scanning the ground before me in lieu of tracer bullets. A line of thin water spouts kicked up before me, trapping me in a transparent cage. The moment I saw that, I changed my attack vector. After a short delay, the sound of machine gun fire rent asunder the sound of the rain falling overhead. A storm of bullets passed through the area that I had stood in just a second ago. I had rectified its aim immediately. I confirmed out of the corner of my eye that the machine gun barrage had stopped for a second. I immediately changed my path even more acutely, planning on doubling back shortly thereafter. It was an old tactic, but an effective one. Because of it, I was able to give it the slip for a second time. And at an edge of the buffer zone that stuck out like a bridgehead, I came upon a largely intact shell of a puffin-heavy APC. I immediately slid down and used it as cover. I would not have to worry about being hit by even HE rounds from here. As long as I stayed closer than the minimum allowed range, I would be in no danger of being targeted by the Fiddler Crab's main armament, its Lurk railgun. I quieted my heavy breathing. The shooting died down. It appeared that my opponent had enough sense to not waste ammunition needlessly. The range between the two of us was a little over 200 meters. Now the hunter would become the hunted. The Fiddler Crab began a rapid retreat. It was an established tactic to retreat and regroup in the case where one did not know the true strength of one's enemy. The gunfire resumed once again. Strange sounds echoed as the machine gun bullets ricocheted off the armor plating of the APC. It would be difficult to hit a moving target with a relatively slow-moving, high-explosive round from a grenade launcher. I would have no choice but to time the motion of my opponent and land a shot accordingly. I knew that I was becoming agitated. The blood in my body ran cold and my senses were rapidly sharpening. I suddenly wondered, was she watching? I wanted to tell her that this was what hunting was all about. A ritual of continued bloodshed that mankind had enacted over and over again since the dawn of its history in order to survive. Even though we had once extended our reach into the vastness of space, nothing had really changed. Mankind had now even created for itself game to hunt, and had equipped itself with fangs that it had not by design been given. The rain continued to fall. Intermittently shining tracer lights around the nearby emplacements, the Fiddler Crab continued its evasive action. I angled my grenade launcher obliquely. I pictured the position of the Fiddler Crab 5 seconds from now. I used my gun sight to target that area as if I were sticking a pushpin through it. I muttered as I counted to 3. I pressed the trigger. The canister drew an arc of white smoke in the air. The Fiddler Crab was in the very place I needed it to be in, as if we had choreographed our actions. I had scored a direct hit on the unarmored root hip joint of its right hind leg. And after several dreadfully tense seconds, a burst of flame bloomed on the Fiddler Crab. With a thunderous roar, the Fiddler Crab came to a precarious halt as if it were going to fall forward. Its huge form inclined slowly. The ventral ammunition container fell from the Fiddler Crab like a rotten fruit with a crash and in an explosion. Having lost one of its joints, the Fiddler Crab's frame groaned in a multi-layered chord. I may have let out a sound that was neither a cheer nor a scream at that point. The Fiddler Crab was severely wounded, but it wasn't dead. Its composite armor plates were trembling in anger like a proud old knight. The main battery, which had fallen greatly askew, whirred to life and started to track towards me. I watched this occur as if it were happening in a world far removed from mine. My field of vision disappeared in a storm of pure white. The thunderous sound of metal grinding assaulted my eardrums. A delayed blast shockwave scattered raindrops everywhere in a boisterous dance similar to a storm at sea. The wind whipped about me, and my nose was filled with the smell of burning ozone. The next moment, my body flipped into the mud as if it had been thrown by a gigantic hand. A mad buzzing filled my ears. I was blinded and couldn't move my legs. They felt as heavy as if they had been cast out of lead. I fumbled around and found that fragments of rubble had toppled over and now blanketed my thighs. I twisted my body about and somehow managed to extract myself. Unlike my body, which wouldn't move dexterously at all, my head was swarming with activity. Just now, the Fiddler Crab had aimed in my direction and fired its main cannon. The slug had veered sharply upward and had struck a building instead of me. It was an attack pattern that couldn't have possibly existed, not against a single infantryman at point-blank range. I tried to move out of the immediate vicinity. If it were running off internal power, then it would take 25 seconds for the LERC on the Type LE to be fully recharged. If I didn't move now, then within the next shot, the building would collapse on top of me. As I made to retreat, I realized that I had no sensation in my right leg. It seemed like it was broken. Both my eyes and my feet now, huh? As a dull pain began to creep up from my leg, I started to laugh. Even now, the rain still continued to fall. And now, I finally understood the situation. So that thing was broken as well. Embraced in the arms of the unending rain, the mechanized monstrosity of a spearman was still dreaming. Dreaming of the gentle city that it was charged to protect, and of the mighty enemies that it was charged to destroy. And I will be ending it here. So thank you all very much for watching, and ciao for now. Ciao for now.